Our keynote speaker today has been a Toastmaster for 27 years and has attained his Distinguished Toastmaster in 2007, an admitted cinephile lover of movies for more than 35 years. His passion for the subject has driven Alan and his wife's movie collection to grow to over 750 movies, the collection of movies from all genres. This speech is for Alan's Prepare to Speak Professionally Project Presentation Mastery Level 5. For many movie buffs, Hollywood's greatest era began in 1939 and ended in the mid-1960s. In reality, the world of movies did not end in the mid-60s. It continues on to this day. Alan will take us on a short exploration of the world of movies and help us discover why we love the movies, plus just a few of the many lesser-known contemporary gems we may not be aware of. The title of his speech is It's the Story. Alan Mann, It's the Story.
A murder in a New Mexico town. People trying to find love in England during the Christmas season. And the backstory of two aging comedic actors. What makes us all unique? Well, for me, and I hope for you, it's the story. Fellow Toastmasters out there in Toastmaster land, wherever you are. I love the movies. And my passion for movies started many years ago when a coworker introduced me to a movie called Sullivan's Travels, which is a story about a producer and how they made movies back in the 30s and the 40s. And I watched that. And I started watching some of the older movies, and I got a deeper appreciation for the movies that were out there. But as I watch these movies, I also have a deep appreciation for the newer movies. There are a number, or literally thousands of newer movies, say post-1960, that have just as much a great story and great acting as those movies in the 30s and the 40s that we all treasure. You know, actors like Humphrey Bogart. When we think of the movies, we think of great actors like Humphrey. We think of Bette Davis. We think of Gregory Peck, Henry Fonda, Katharine Hepburn. All those great actors. But there's so many wonderful actors and great movies now. There's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's done some good acting. There's Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Charlize Theron. Just a number of great actors and actresses out there, and the movies and the stories they have told. When I was thinking about this speech, I started thinking about, well, why do we really love the movies? And for a lot of us, it's that 1.5 to 2 hours we can escape. And this is really relevant right now because all we hear about on the news is about the pandemic. And if we watch a movie, we could find great movies out there on Netflix and many other streaming channels. There are great movies just for 1.5 to 2 hours you can escape on what is going on. And that's really why movies were so successful in the 30s and the 40s, because during the 30s people were trying to escape the Depression. During the 40s it was the war. And the 60s, all the other things that were going on in the world, the Vietnam War. The movies have always been an escape. And the foundation of any good movie is the story. Yes, you cannot have a good movie without great acting. Whether it's Humphrey Bogart back in the 40s or Robert De Niro now, it's the acting that brings the story to life. but there's also so many movies we don't know about. We know about Star Wars and the 9+ movies about Star Wars, and they're great movies. Star Wars is a great movie about good and evil. But there are so many lesser known movies that were in and out of the theaters before you could even blink over the last 20 or 30 years that we missed. And thanks to streaming, you could find them. I really didn't start thinking about these lesser known movies like Lone Star, until one day I was watching a TV show called Siskel and Ebert at the Movies. Now, for you who are old enough to remember Siskel and Ebert at the Movies, it was Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert. They were two columnists in Chicago, worked for rival newspapers, but they had this half-hour show where they'd review movies that were coming out. And they'd start off the show with the big blockbusters that were coming out, because that was what everybody wanted to know, how Gene Siskel or Roger Ebert thought about Star Wars, or the latest Star Wars movie, or Terminator 2. But toward the end, they would share a movie that you never heard about. And one of the movies that they talked about was this movie called Lone Star, 1996. And I got curious, and I watched it. And then I could open up a whole new world of movies. As I said, when we watch the TV or streaming, we see the advertisement for these big blockbusters. And the ones that have these multi-billion dollar, well, not billion, but multi-million dollar budgets. But there's a lot of independent movies or other movies where maybe a actor is producing the movie themselves that may not get the advertisement, and we were not even aware of them. And there's so many gems out there, and it's like opening up the whole world. And we're in a way lucky now, because all these movies that have been in and out of theaters over the years that you may have found at your video store about 10 years ago, which has now gone the way of Netflix, where you used to order a video or DVD online and be delivered to you, or you go to Redbox. Now you don't even have to leave the comfort of your home. There's streaming services like Hulu. Netflix has multitude of movies. There's a multitude, HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, all have streaming services for these movies. And so this is one opportunity, a movie called Lone Star, to look at. But there's so many out there, and I got to thinking, and I want to share tonight, all these movies, they go over all genres of movies, that there's something for everybody. If you want a good date night movie for your wife, but obviously you can't go out on a date anymore, maybe you should think about this movie called Love Actually. Hugh Grant, William Nielsen, Laura Linney, Colin Firth. It's a good comedy love story with a multitude of little love stories going, and how some of them intersect and some of them don't. And it's got the love story aspect for the wife and the comedic acts. If you want a little comedy for yourself, that's great. It's a great feel-good movie. If you like stories about war and how the reality of war, and wanted to see a little surprise, like a young Mark Hamill act, I would like to recommend a movie called The Big Red One. It's actually based on a true story of Sam Fuller, who was a war correspondent during World War II, and his experiences from the invasion of Italy, North Africa, through Europe. And believe it or not, it's great to see a young Mark Hamill, yes, Luke Skywalker, act in a real serious movie. And it's a great story if you love serious movies. And some of us do. There's nothing wrong with it. Some of us like comedy, some of us like serious. We want to open our mind. Some people want to hear a little bit about Hollywood history. A colleague of mine at work last year recommended a movie called Stan and Ollie. Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy. Remember those? Laurel and Hardy? There's a story called Stan and Ollie about the last few years of their acting career, and it's a really interesting movie. Now, anytime you're watching a movie about a person who actually lived, you have to keep in mind that sometimes Hollywood will take a few liberties with history. But for the most part, this gets it right. It's a very interesting movie about the last couple years of them working together in England. Very interesting and sometimes very funny movie. We could all use a feel-good movie. How about the backstory of something that may or may not have happened right before the Apollo 11 moon landing? The Dish. Very funny movie. Subtle humor about some engineers working at a radio telescope station in Australia. I'm not going to give you the plot, but if you like a slight comedic bent on your movies, you might want to check this out. There are literally thousands, as I said, thousands of stories we may never have heard of. I was shocked a couple months ago when a movie called Parasite won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Who ever heard of this movie called Parasite? It came out of nowhere. It's an independent movie that was produced and directed in South Korea that not only won Best Foreign Language, but Best Picture. Here, the Best Picture award. And I start to wonder, you know what? There must be something unique to that movie, and I'm really interested and cannot wait till it comes out on streaming because we missed it in the theater. What made this movie so special? What is there in the story? There are so many unique, as I said, there's thousands of unique movies. There was a movie for those people who like movies about the war, about the people dealing with, recovering from a war. There's a great movie called Courage Under Fire with Denzel Washington. It's not about a man going crazy shooting up people after his experiences in Desert Storm 1. But him coming to terms with his experiences while he is investigating whether a certain individual, the first woman who's been nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor, is worthy of that award. And so you have two stories going throughout the movie. And I never heard of the movie until one day I was listening to a radio commentary by a gentleman by the name of Rod Lurie. He used to write a column for a Los Angeles magazine on the local movies. And he said, this is a movie that is guaranteed to make any man cry. And that got me curious. Not that men aren't able to cry, but we're taught to hold our emotions in. And I watched that movie, and I swear at the end I really had a hard time holding my emotions in. It's such a moving story, and I guarantee, man, if you want to watch this with your wife, both of you are going to be so moved in a positive way. And the great thing is, this gentleman by the name of Rod Lurie, who was a columnist, decided to put his money where his mouth is and stop commenting on people's movies, whether they were good or bad. But he actually went out and started producing and directing a movie. And one of my other favorite little gems out there that you probably have not heard of is a movie called The Contender with Laura Linney and Gary Oldman. And it's an interesting, Beau Bridges. And what makes this movie so interesting is, it's Jeff Bridges, I'm sorry. What makes this movie so interesting is Jeff Bridges plays the President of the United States. And the plot is he wants his legacy to be the first president to nominate and have a woman vice president. And all of the movies about all the political background and backstabbing that he has to deal with to make this happen. But in the same story, it's interesting to watch this movie and watch how he uses food, among things, to manipulate people he is negotiating with. It's a wonderful, I don't like to use little or small, it's a wonderful, lesser known movie out there. And again, I'm looking here at all my movies like, The King of Comedy, and there's just so many, Parkland, and all these movies here. I have so many movies, me and my wife have so many movies here. And a number of them are movies that weren't blockbusters. They're great stories to watch. Now, how can you find these movies? There's a website called Internet Movie Database, IMDb. And you could go in there, you could find out all the movies by a certain actor. If you my wife likes Will Smith. And the reason why she likes Will Smith is she likes to see him in movies and see how much he has grown from those days of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I've seen him in some very, very good movies. The man has talent, and she's right, the wife is right. He has really grown as an actor. So if you want to find all the movies by Will Smith, you could do that. If you want to find movies of a certain genre, you could find it. And from there, you could go to another website, your favorite streaming site, and you could download those movies. And for an hour and a half, 2 hours, or sometimes longer, depending on the movie, you can escape all the stuff. And that's really that's what it's all about, really. And that's why this is so important. There's so many stories out there. There's this, not the general cop, shoot him up, get the bad guy, throw him in jail, and the two people live happily ever after type of movies. There's so many unique type of stories out there, whether you, for whatever you love. I love movies about Winston Churchill. And there was a movie that came out 2 years ago called Finest Hour, or Darkest Hour, excuse me. And I saw it in the theater, and I just walked away just dumbfounded. For those of you who love movies told in an interesting way, you've got to do a search by a gentleman called Quentin Tarantino. His most recent movie was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But he's known for movies like The Inglourious Bastard, Django, and most notably Pulp Fiction. And what's interesting about him is how he tells the story. Just not the story itself, but how he tells the story. And that in itself makes the movie so interesting. There's so many ways you could, again, if you like war movies, you want love stories, you want old movies, you want newer movies. There's just so many ways that you could find movies out there by just doing a little research on the internet. And then all it takes with your click of your search on your DVR or your Hulu or whatever, Roku or Amazon Prime or whatever streaming source you have, is to escape into another story for an hour and a half and 30 minutes to 2 hours. There's so many great movies. And that's really, I think, and I'm using the term Hollywood lightly because it's just not Hollywood, it's Bollywood, which is India. There's movies from Europe, from all parts of the world, and the South Korea, Parasites. There's so many great movies out there, just waiting. So many gems, and newer gems. That's not, you don't need to search on it. Even though I love my friend Humphrey Bogart there. And there's so many gems out there that, you know, you could be occupied for a long period of time just trying to discover. There's a whole world out there of lesser known gems. And what's a gem to myself, or your wife, or yourself, may be different to somebody else, but each of us have our own view of what a gem is. And there's so much out there, and that's what's so great. It's so easy to find. It's just a few clicks away on your computer, and all these stories, right, are open to you. So take this time that you have and discover not just some of the older movies, but discover all the newer movies that you missed. And share those times with your spouse, your family, your friends. There's so much out there, and so many stories. It's just a click away. Fellow Toastmasters,